And we are live. I decided not to do the thing that I did last time, the intro. Remember how I said
Yeah.
I hated that?
I don't remember exactly what you said, but I do
I don't even
remember
want to
you
repeat
did
it.
you did something different.
Yeah, and I said that I would spice it up from here on out, and
Yeah, that was a one-time thing.
I went back and listened to it twice, and both times I was like, that sucked. I hated that. That is called, for those in the industry or out of the industry, that's called clickbait. I just baited you into clicking on the intro of the previous episode.
That's really funny.
It wasn't intentional. I really did not like the intro last time. Okay, hello everybody. Today, we are recording, or well, rather, you are listening to episode 25 of Lowering the Barrier, and the working title is The Most Common Mistakes in Fat Loss. I don't know if that's exactly what the title is going to be, but that's the premise, the topic that we're going to be covering today. In the future, I'd like to have some of these more practical and tangible questions that we can answer, but we can do a really good job of answering in depth. This isn't going to be like a rapid fire. We're going to bang this out in 5 minutes. Like, I'm going to go in depth. I looked at a bunch of research, and all the research will be shared in the show notes. But yeah, if you have any questions that you feel like you would like answered on the podcast, go ahead and just shoot it to me. You can either email it to me, Alex at alextamifitness.com, or you can just DM me on Instagram, whatever's easiest for you. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am very good. I love that it's middle of the day and we're recording this, and it's not like 9-10 p.m. like when we were doing them, because I was getting really tired, and like my brain was burnt out, and now I feel very refreshed and like awake right now.
It was tough to do that. Just so people know, before people like start commenting and whatever, we do have a baby monitor. The baby is napping.
Baby's napping.
I may peace out halfway through depending on when he wakes up. We have no idea.
We don't know yet.
He could nap for 20 minutes. He could nap for 2 hours. Who's to say?
2 hours, I don't think that's happening.
That's a rarity.
I would not bet on that. Yeah.
That is a rarity.
Okay, so standard plugs. Check out the A-Team. At the time of this recording, we just started cycle 18 of the A-Team. You can check out Forward Forever, which is a group training and nutrition program. Great community there. Check out the Change Project, which is my one-on-one coaching program. Go ahead and give this podcast a 5-star rating if you love it. And if you don't love it, just don't rate it.
Keep that to yourself.
If it's a 4 below, email me the constructive criticism rather than tanking my reviews. I would appreciate it. And then if you really like this episode, we always love the shout outs on Instagram, and be sure to tag me in it if, because that way it notifies me. If you're looking for supplements, check out Legion. Use code ALEXTME for 20% off your first order and double points on purchase. And I'm also sponsored by Macro Factor. Use code ALEX for a 2-week free trial. Okay, what are we watching? Severance season 2 has released. They are doing weekly releases on Thursdays at 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
That I found, they said it was going to be released on Friday. If you go to Apple TV, like the website or whatever, it says releases on Fridays. That's not true.
Yeah, it
is Thursday at 9 p.m. I found that out from the director Ben Stiller.
I love how you said Ben Stiller as if that's not like a well-known, like very established human being.
Well, okay, fair. However, I do think, what else has he directed? Not that I
no, as far as a director goes,
he's very well known. He's an A-lister,
right? It's just a funny way of thinking of Ben Stiller.
But man, he's just crushing it. And this show is
phenomenal.
So good.
Probably my favorite show.
Favorite show of all time.
Yeah, there's a couple that come close for me, but
yeah,
it's really
that
good.
one that I'm sending you clips of all the time. What is that one?
Succession. Phenomenal show.
So good.
Yeah. Very funny.
I need to turn off I just did that thing. When you're on like your iPhone and you do the thumbs up and it does that little thumbs up bubble?
Yeah.
That's doing that again. And I cannot stand that.
Like during the podcast?
During the podcast. Yes, during the podcast. Oh, reactions. Here we go. I just turned it off. Okay, we're good to go. I think it would happen for you too. Anyway, so if you're watching on video, sorry about that little thumbs up bubble. You're probably a little confused. Anyway.
That's really funny.
Let's see, what else are we watching? Reading. I just finished Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. Mm-hmm. That was a really, really interesting book. And now I'm reading like a 200-page PDF thing by Eric Trexler on interpreting research and statistics, which I know for like I probably just bored the listeners to tears, even just with the title of that.
Mhm.
But it is very interesting to me. Um, Other than that, entertainment wise,
I am reading
oh
Essentialism.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, I'm
You like
like,
it?
yeah, I'm like a third of the way through.
Yeah,
I don't know the author's name off the top of my head, unfortunately, but it's a great book.
we're reading a lot of children's books. To
Yes.
Milo.
Yep, I read about 3 to 5 picture books a day.
What was that one we just read? The 50, 80, 80,
Oh yes,
84
the
crayons,
perfect never used
84
unbroken something
unbroken
crayons
84 crayons or something like
by
that.
Leanne Hatch.
It was good. It wasn't great, I would say,
I think it
because
was cute.
okay, but they completely glossed over. So the premise of this is this girl goes to a store, this child goes to a store with her dad, and she sees these crayons, like the mega box of crayons. You guys know what I'm talking about, like the 84 box, and it's got all the crayon colors. And she's like, "Dad, can I please have this?" And they said, and the text on the book said, um, so they made a deal, you know. And then the next page, we just see her with the crayons. They never went into the intricacies of that deal. They did.
They
Okay,
did.
let me say. It cut to her doing some chores, but I would like to highlight again, it never went into the intricacies of the deal. I'd like
Yeah.
to understand, you know, what were the pros, cons? What was the brainstorming session that went behind the deal? What kind of investments were involved? What kind of, I think there is a lot of what compromises,
Yeah.
what was the counter offer? What was the original deal? What was the counter offer?
Yeah. What was the back and forth?
Exactly. And so I just think, and then it like story structure generally has, the intro, the climax, the resolution, generally speaking. And it feels like we were being introduced to this for so long and they were building up to this climax. And then the climax happened, as it usually does, what, 2/3 of the way through a story. It felt like it was 7/8 or
Yeah.
9/10 of the way through the story. Climax, bam, done. And it's like there was
I
no
agree with that.
resolution with the sister, Marigold. There was there was a slight resolution,
It was
but I feel
rushed.
like it could have been fleshed out.
Yeah.
Give me 3 more pages.
3 more pages. You could have done a lot with 3 more pages. I do think it was cute, and I liked the premise.
I like the premise a lot because I'm a big believer. The premise of the story was she
use the things you have.
Use the things you have. She
Yeah.
had this big box and they were perfect crayons. The wrappers were all, on them. They were all pointed tips, and she was just refusing to use them because she didn't want to
ruin them.
She didn't want to ruin them. Yeah. And her sister was like her younger sister was trying to convince her to use them. Anyway, you can tell things are slow in the Teamy household when we're talking about the intricacies of deals between fictional father-daughter in a children's book.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm playing a lot of chess. You're picking up chess slowly.
Yes.
Play League of Legends, Marvel Rivals, and that's about it for entertainment.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, you ready to get into today's topic?
I am.
All right.
I feel like, not gonna lie, I feel like I'm slightly less prepared than usual on this one, but I think
you can add to it though.
I think that this is something that I can like.
You can
add to in some areas for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're also like, I'm
not doing the research,
and you got a lot on your plate. This isn't your career, where it is mine. And so it's like, I got to be on the weeds. I'm doing this stuff every day. And you're kind of like, you're doing it by association. You understand what I do for fat loss. You understand how I treat and talk to my clients for fat loss, the messaging I put on social media. Like you're very adjacent to all that. So I think
adjacent. That's a great way.
You'll definitely be able to contribute. All right, so today's topic is the most common mistakes in fat loss. And again, reminder, just in case you skipped the entertainment section, which I wouldn't blame you for, all of the sources I'm about to plug will be linked in the show notes. So if you're curious about any of the studies or anything like that, you want to do your own reading, feel free. Okay, so from a broad perspective, when we're thinking about fat loss, when we're thinking about weight loss, we really want to dial that down a little bit more into specifically fat loss. And the reason for that is because when we lose weight, it is possible. Let's just kind of go real broad here. When we lose weight, it's possible that we lose it from a combination of both body fat and muscle tissue. However, if we lose more muscle tissue, our body may increase hunger. Something called hyperphagia, which is excess hunger, may increase our hunger in order to get that muscle mass, that fat-free mass back. And so this is kind of what can happen with yo-yo dieting, where when somebody is, let's say they crash diet, they try to lose calories as fast as possible, they do something really restrictive, maybe they're not weightlifting, maybe they're not really focusing on their protein intake, and they do lose weight, but it is from both body fat and muscle. And, the more aggressive you lose, especially if you're not lifting weights, especially if you're not, managing your protein intake, you're going to lose a higher proportion of that lean mass, that fat-free mass, that muscle mass. And when you do lose that, the body doesn't like that. And so may increase that hunger to try to, encourage you to eat more, increasing the body weight back up. But again, it's not proportional. When we gain weight, again, depending on the rate that we do it at, it's not going to be proportional in terms of how we lost it. So let's say I'm just going to throw out some really random numbers, okay? Just for like example purposes. Let's say we lose 10 pounds. 80% of that is, you know what? Let's go bigger. Let's say we lose 10 pounds. 50% of that is body fat. 50% of that is lean mass. Okay. So 5 pounds each, right? This would mean that we're probably not lifting weights. We are probably not focusing on protein intake. We're not doing those things. And then let's say, oh, our body wants to get that back, wants to get that 5 pounds of lean mass back. It doesn't really care about the body fat. It wants to get that 5 pounds of lean mass back though. So what it'll do, we increase our hunger. We notice that hunger. We start eating more, kind of subconsciously, maybe subconsciously, and some subconsciously. And when we do start eating more, calorie intake increases, and we start gaining weight. But we're not gaining. Let's say we gain 10 pounds back. It's not like we're gonna magically put on 5 pounds of muscle,
right?
And so maybe we gain that 10 pounds back, but it's 8 pounds of body fat and 2 pounds of muscle. Or if our body tries to get back all of the fat-free mass, maybe it's 5 pounds of that, fat-free mass that we lost in the first place, but it's 10, 15, 20 pounds of body fat. And so this is called collateral fattening. And there is a study on it. I think I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I did mention this somewhere else in the study, or maybe it wasn't in a study. Maybe it was in a recent oh no, I am going to be talking about this at some point, but so I'll cover this in a little bit, but I just wanted to set that context of some of the common mistakes in fat loss is from a broad perspective. When we're losing weight, we want to be focusing on body fat loss, and we want to really be focusing on maintaining as much muscle as possible. All right, let's get into it. The first common mistake. And I think the first thing that many people will point to, especially I don't want to call people out or anything like that, but other coaches in the industry, I've seen them say this. Don't do an aggressive calorie deficit. The slower, the better. Mm-hmm. I have said this 3 years ago. I said this, that the faster you lose it, the higher the likelihood you keep it off. That's actually not true. Mm-hmm. While it is person dependent, and sure, some people, if they lose faster, they will increase the risk of muscle loss. We'll get into that in a second. They may have a large degree of metabolic adaptation, which could make things potentially harder. Maybe there's a higher degree of burnout because, bigger calorie deficit, you're going to be more lethargic, workout recovery is going to be worse. All that said, there was a 2010 study titled "The Association Between Rate of Initial Weight Loss and Long-Term Success in Obesity Treatment Does Slow and Steady Win the Race?" And this study found that fast weight losers, so people who lost weight faster, obtained greater weight reduction and long-term maintenance, and were not more susceptible to weight regain than gradual weight losers. So it's like, okay, that's just one study, but then What? Go
Can I
ahead.
just ask a question about
Uh-huh.
this study?
Uh-huh.
Does it mention anything about like what populations this is in? Like, does this apply to people who maybe are not dealing with like they're not trying to lose like a large amount of weight necessarily?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this one in particular, so the this one had the sample. So as part of a trial called the Tours trial. Researchers love giving them like fancy names, but and then TOURS. Like whenever they do stuff like this, it always stands for something, like it's an acronym. They try to be so clever with it.
Yeah, I like that.
But this was a sample of middle-aged men. Um, Middle-aged obese women who received a 6-month lifestyle intervention followed by 1-year extended care program. The participants were encouraged. I'm just reading the methods from the study right now. Participants were encouraged to reduce calorie intake to achieve weight losses of about a pound per week. It's in kilograms, but it's about 1 pound per week. And then groups were then categorized into fast, moderate, or slow. Fast was, let's see, about 1.4 pounds per week. Moderate was between about a half pound to 1.4 pounds per week, and slow was slower than a half pound of weight loss per week.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they looked at, and this was based on the weight loss within the first month of treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and then they followed up with those people.
Yeah.
So does this apply to everybody? No, well, not necessarily. It's whenever we look at research, it's not to say that, oh, okay, if I am, let's see, so the mean, or the average age was 59.3 years old. The average BMI was 36.8. So it's okay. Well, if I'm 59.3 years old and I'm an obese, woman with a BMI, if I'm a woman with obesity, I'd rather say,
Sure.
with a BMI of 36.8, then surely I should lose. Like, no.
Yeah, I was just curious about like,
Does it? You're
right?
Yeah,
Like
apply
who
to other?
was
No, I think
who
it's a
was
really good
at
question. I think that's a question that a lot of listeners would have, is like, does this say confidently, that it would work either within that sample and, outside of that
Right.
sample, in a greater population? And I would say, like, yeah, like I said, not necessarily. However, all research kind of informs us as to it shifts our direction slightly. We should never see one study, and I'm saying this not to you because I think, well, I know you know this, but I'm saying this to the listeners. We should always allow research to inform an opinion and not make the opinion.
Mhm.
I hope that makes sense. When a new
Right.
study comes out, we may see conflicting studies. We may see studies that have totally opposite results, but we have to look at the breadth of the research on a
Right.
topic to really make, and that's where something like a systematic review or a meta-analysis really comes into play, is when researchers do a study on a number of studies, 5, 10, 20, 30 plus studies, to look at, okay, well, what does the accumulation of the data say? So anyway, one more study on this topic, a 2020 study titled 3-Year Effect of Weight Loss via Severe versus Moderate Energy Restriction on Body Composition Among Postmenopausal Women with Obesity, the Tempo Diet Trial. And this was the same thing. They just found that people who lost weight faster, they didn't necessarily have worse outcomes. And the conclusion, even in this one, was severe energy restriction is more effective than moderate energy restriction for reducing weight and adiposity in postmenopausal women in the long term. But attention to bone mineral density loss in the first year is required. And so bone mineral density is actually something that I want to make a podcast topic on eventually. I've been talking about it on my Instagram story quite a bit lately, but yeah, I mean, women, especially peri and postmenopause, have higher rates of osteoporosis. And so, lifting weights and making sure you have sufficient muscle mass. There's a lot of things that you can do for that, but lifting weights is a really, really big one. Anyway, I'm thinking that maybe in the next episode, I'm not sure if it's the exact next episode or in the next few, I'd like to cover rapid fat loss, how to do it, how fast you can lose, who it makes more or less sense for, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But just know that if you are, very scared or worried about some of the messaging around aggressive weight loss, when you're like, oh no, I need to be in a 7-calorie deficit or a 50-calorie deficit or a 100-calorie deficit. Like, I can't lose too fast or else I'm going to put it back on. Like, that's not really what the research shows. And if you feel comfortable going a little bit faster, that's absolutely okay. But the name of the game ultimately is adherence and relative sustainability. We're never going to sustain a deficit forever, obviously, because you just wither away to nothing. But, you do need to be able to sustain it for a period of weeks and maybe months, and depending on how much you have to lose or want to lose, maybe years. So, rate is dependent on the person and their lifestyle, their genetics, their, a large host of factors. All right, so the next 2 points are going to cover high volume foods, protein and fiber. Now, you have done a lot of reading on hunger, satiety, volume. Do you remember the stuff that you read about calorie density versus, volume and that tipping point?
Oh, let me pull up so I don't butcher it.
Well, I wouldn't even say, feel free to pull it up if you want to, but at the same time, if you just kind of want to talk about it off the cuff without mentioning numbers, feel free.
Yeah. Well, there's this very interesting. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it. There's this very interesting situation where I think I did find it. When we're looking at like energy density, that's the part you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calorie density, energy density, same thing here.
Yes. So I'm going to try not to read too much off of this, but the idea is like foods with low energy density have higher water and fiber content. So thinking low energy density foods like your watermelon, lettuce,
broccoli,
things you can eat a very
fruits,
high,
veggies,
very large amount of, but they're going to have pretty low calorie, all things considered.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, you're going to have your super high calorie things that don't have much
very
volume to them.
Density.
So like a donut.
Oreos.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Sauces, a lot of sauces.
Yes. Yeah. So when we're able to lean into these lower energy density foods, we're able to eat more volume, more like a bigger plate or
bigger bowl,
whatever.
Bigger plate, whatever.
Yes, while consuming less calories. So we really want to kind of, I don't want to say we want to lean into them or you have to lean into them, but they're a great tool in hunger management and satiety. And for one of the like presentations we worked on for the Change Project, I gave the example of if you were to sit down and eat an entire watermelon, you are going to be extremely full. But you probably didn't intake a ton of calories. Where on the other side, if you sat down and ate an entire pizza, you have eaten a ton of calories, but you may not be as full. I mean, a whole pizza is a lot of food. So
maybe
like,
3 slices of pizza.
Yeah, three slices is a lot better.
2 slices of pizza. If we equated the calories between a massive bowl of watermelon versus the equivalent in calories in pizza, I don't know those numbers exactly off the top of my head. It depends on the size of the bowl. It depends on the pizza. But like, let's just use an example of a big ass bowl of watermelon versus maybe 1 slice of pizza. Because one slice of pizza, it could be 250 to even 400 calories depending on the slice, So, when you think about that, continue on.
So essentially, there's a turning point where food volume is no longer the primary satiety signal. Going back to this like example of watermelon versus pizza, when you have a super high volume meal and you feel really full, it's because your stomach itself, there's no more room in there.
It has sensors in there that tell you basically how much your stomach is stretching.
Right. Versus when you're eating a lot of pizza, where your stomach itself is not going to be as full versus the volume of watermelon, but your calorie intake is going to be the thing that triggers your satiety. So there's a turning point where it's no longer about calories but volume instead that triggers your fullness,
and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so if you've noticed, maybe you've eaten maybe some, like for example, some cheesecake and it's very calorie dense. maybe you've noticed like, wow, I'm very full. That was rich, I'm very full despite it being not a massive portion. And then on the other side of things, you've had this giant salad. It wasn't very high in calories, but you think like, oh, wow, I'm very full. Our body can kind of sense that, that fullness in two different ways. And so there's this kind of tipping point of, it's not something you really need to worry about, but I do think it's pretty interesting, the way the body works along with satiety signals. So just wanted to kind of like set that framework ahead of high volume foods and calorie density and things like that. And so first we're going to talk about protein. And so a lack of sufficient protein, I think everybody knows this, hampers, reduces muscle preservation, can, reduce satiety. Protein's obviously very satiating. Protein contributes to muscle growth, as well as muscle maintenance. And a brand new study that was just published on January 22nd of 2025 titled Effect of Dietary Protein on Fat-Free Mass and Energy-Restricted Resistance-Trained Individuals, an updated systematic review with meta-regression. This is by Raffaello, Eric Trexler, and Eric Helms. They found a linear increase on the effect of protein intake on fat-free mass retention in a deficit. Okay, I know I just said a lot of words, but let me say that first, I just posted an Instagram post on this, like kind of covering the study, and there was at least one person who was pretty bummed out by what I was saying. And so let me first set the precedent that these targets that I'm about to lay out, these are for people who are already lean. They are already, and by lean, like probably have visible abs or rough, like very, very solid, about to be abs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're going to be lean. They're going to have some visible shape to their muscle. I'll get into body fat percentages and which last episode, really quick side note, last episode I got a funny message, a very kind message saying, I had a little bit of a rant, a little bit of a crash out, as the kids would say these days, on body fat scales, body fat percentages, especially like BIA scales, which are like the handheld things or the foot things, that tell you, that air quote, tell you your body fat percentage. It's way wrong. Anyways, I had a complete rant, and I got a message from somebody, and she was actually the person that I used as an example, nameless, but I did use her as an example in that episode. And she actually reached out, was like, I take no offense. It was your best episode yet. Absolutely loved it. And so all that said, I don't love the body fat percentage thing, but I am going to use it as a metric here. Because it can be useful in certain cases. I just don't want certain people to get too in the weeds about it. Anyway, these protein targets I'm about to give, they are for lean individuals in a calorie deficit who are trying to maximize their muscle preservation or even gain while in a deficit. So these are like the highest of the high protein targets.
Yeah, this is a very specific.
This is so
audience.
specific, and it's so maximalist. Like, it's not like, oh, if I'm under this, I'm just gonna ruin my body composition. I'm absolutely screwed. Like, please, no, don't think that. I got a comment on my Instagram post saying that it was really disheartening, and it's like, well, this is just information for us to have. I felt pretty guilty about that, honestly. Like, I don't want to put out information that is talking about how to maximize efficiency, but then make people who aren't able to maximize efficiency, I don't want to make them feel bad. Literally, the headline on my Instagram bio was lowering the barrier. The name of this podcast is lowering the barrier. I want to make this all simpler for you. However, I am also very interested on a personal and professional level in the research. I love seeing what is efficient. I love seeing what the research can do. But when we look at the research, when scientists are doing the research, they are taking things to the nth degree, to the absolute max, to see what is possible, to see if there are any trends that we can extrapolate. Like the quadriceps study, where they were doing, what was it, 52 sets of quads in a week. I am not telling you, I am not saying like, oh, if you want maximum muscle growth, you got to do 52 sets of each muscle group every week. Like, that's ridiculous. Is that, did they get better muscle growth? Yeah. And there's probably not an upper limit well, we have not found the upper limit to how much volume increases muscle growth. When I'm saying volume, I mean set volume. So one set, I should say 10 sets will create better muscle growth than one set, typically. 20 sets will, generally speaking, grow more muscle than 10 sets. 30 sets will grow more than 20, and so on and so on and so on. But these are just trends, and these inform our decisions. This should not be like, well, if I can't do it, then screw it, then I'm going to feel bad. Like, that's the opposite of how I want you to feel. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going on about this, but it's all to say these targets that I'm about to give for protein, please do not think like, oh, I need to be hitting these targets. It's just to say that if you can increase your protein intake, good. It will help out with muscle preservation or even muscle gain. Anyway, this study looked at, this meta-analysis looked at 29 studies and found that protein intakes up to about 1.4 grams per pound or 3.2 grams per kilogram of body mass or body weight are linearly associated with larger fat-free mass gains. However, again, it's based on a lean individual. For men, this would be somewhere in about the 12 to 15% body fat range. And for women, this would be about 20 to 24%, give or take. And somebody with this, like at 10%, you're going to be very visible abs, not quite in the realm of like bodybuilder, absolutely disgustingly shredded, like stage lean, but 10% and below for men is where we start getting the extremely lean, like scary lean. Especially like, man, 5, 6, 7%, most people in the world are not going to be able to maintain that for very long. Like, that's a very, very short time to go there, because that's where we're maybe depending on the person, maybe risking health. However, they go on to say that those targets are more reasonable for people who absolutely cannot risk fat-free mass loss. So like, if you're 150 pounds and you're thinking, okay, well, I am kind of lean right now, does that mean that I have to hit, what would that be? Times by 150 times by 1.4 is 210. Okay, like, guys, like, we don't need to, let's not overthink this. Is it a big deal, if we're 150 pounds or whatever, and we can't get 210 grams? Like, no, relax. That is, leave that for the bodybuilders. Leave that for the people whose it's their job, right. Or they have a private chef or whatever, right? Now, for non-athletes or people who don't need to absolutely maximize fat-free mass retention, but still want, to maybe increase their protein intake, have an informed, target, about 0.86 grams per pound or about 1.9 grams per kilogram of body mass could be a good target. And I would just round to 0.9 grams per pound for easy math. That's a pretty reasonable target. But if you have body weight to lose, if you have excess adiposity, if you are not already lean, maybe use goal body weight for that target. And if you know your fat-free mass, which you would know by, let's say you think like, okay, let's say I'm going to pull out the calculator for this one. Let's say I'm 200 pounds, right? And I'm just eyeballing it. Let's say I am 30% body fat, which, depending on man or woman, that could be, you're holding on to a bit of body fat at 30%. For women, that's within the realms of, like normal. Like, I don't want to say normal. Like, that's like not, I don't want to say normal, abnormal, but you know what I mean. I hope. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's say I'm 30% body fat, 200 pounds. That would mean I'm 70% fat-free mass, right? So then 70%, 200 pounds times by 70% would be 140. We take 140, we multiply it by that 0.9, and we get 126 grams of protein. I feel like, oh wait, no, we want to use the 2.5 grams per kilogram. Oh God, now I gotta do, oh God. Okay, wait, okay, oh man. All right, well, you guys can do this on your own.
This is how I feel when you start rattling off numbers and expect me to do mental math on the podcast.
Oh God, I know. Okay, so 2.5 times by 2.5. All right, it'd be 158 grams of protein for somebody who's 200 pounds and 30% body fat. So it's like that 158 grams. That's a much more reasonable target. Still probably, a little bit higher than maybe some people who have that weight want to eat, maybe. But, if we're looking at, if the first number I said was 1.4 grams per pound, that same person might be like, are you kidding me? I need to eat like 300 grams of protein? No, you don't need to do that. Okay, last note on this. The authors noted that the findings are exploratory rather than confirmatory, because the studies that they used, there were a lot of different variables, genetics, of participants, training programs, calorie intake, or like size of the calorie deficit. There were a lot of different variables that went into this. So, as always, use it to inform your opinion rather than make your opinion. All right, that's it on protein. Last thing, I guess, on protein, if you're like 0.9 grams per pound, there's no way I can do that. Even if I use goal body weight, there's no way I can do that. Then don't do that. Then go for 0.6 grams per pound, 0.7 grams per pound, 0.8 grams per pound. Just do what you can.
Yeah.
Like, find a target that is maintainable, realistic. Stop with this all or nothing bullshit. It's not getting you anywhere. People are harder on themselves than they need to be. And when we say things like, if I can't do everything, I choose to do nothing, I think you lose all semblance of what progress will look like in the long term. You will never be able to go 100% for 52 weeks of the year. It's just not possible. It's not going to happen. So you need to be okay with adapting to what you can give. If you have 40% to give and you give 40%, you gave 100%.
Right.
If you have 80% to give and you gave 60%, you gave 75% of what you had. And that's still so much better than 0%.
Right.
So it's just, I know I'm throwing out a lot of numbers, a lot of percentages. I just get like, I don't know.
There's a lot of progress to be made in between doing everything and doing nothing. Like, there's a lot to be done in the middle of that.
I think it's James Clear in the Atomic Habits book. He talks about like the power of 1% change.
Yeah.
And he has that awesome chart where it's like, it shows you, visually what can happen across 365 days of 1% change, So anyway, don't worry if you can't maximize your protein intake, your fiber intake, your calories, your sleep, your stress, your workouts. Like, please do not worry about maximizing everything. Sorry, this has been this is a 15-minute rant just on that alone, but I think it is important. It's important. All right. Do you want to handle the next one on fiber?
Yeah. So the next mistake, or common mistake, would be ignoring fiber intake. Fiber is going to be highly satiating and very high volume. And it's also just really good for us. It's good for our gut microbiome. There's a whole slew of health benefits. I think we did a fiber episode.
We did. That was episode 21, Fiber 101. So I would check that one out.
Yeah. Because there are so many benefits to fiber.
We really went into the weeds on that one.
I think fiber is so overlooked.
You love fiber.
Yes.
And you didn't love fiber until I put you on the task of like, hey, I need you to handle this fiber thing.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was. I think it was either for the change project forward, or what was it?
It's for forward. So I don't know if I'm like breaking the fourth wall here or something like that, but I do a lot of the deep dives, or I like help out with deep dives and the creation of different things for forward. So I went on this I don't know, 3-week long endeavor to learn everything about fiber.
You don't help out with, you do them.
I do them, but I don't want to.
No, I mean, like, take ownership of that. I write the programs. I'm engaged in the community. I do all that, but and you ask me questions when you need clarification on things, or like if there's research that you need pulled, I pull it and I interpret it for you.
Yeah.
But no, you have been writing the deep dives.
Yeah, I do the deep dives.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went on this like 3, 4, 5 week endeavor to really learn everything I could about fiber. And wow, we are not eating enough fiber.
I've been saying it, but it's like, yeah, in our household, all of a sudden she starts reading about it. All of a sudden we got fruits, we got veggies. And like we were eating a lot of fruits and veggies, but we have pumped that up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the big thing is, I shouldn't say the big thing. The big thing is hitting your fiber target.
Yeah,
You
quantity.
want to hit your fiber target.
Yeah.
However,
Equally
the thing
important.
I did not know was the importance of fiber diversity. And this is like the
yes.
hill that I'm dying on now, is we need to diversify the amount of the types of fiber we're
Yeah.
consuming, or like our sources of fiber.
So the people out there who are eating the Mission or whatever brand it is, low carb tortillas, you get 14 grams of fiber, per thing.
Yes.
You eat 3 of those, you hit 30 plus grams of fiber, and you think, wow, I am a fiber king or queen. No, you're not.
You're halfway there.
You're doing good. You could be doing great if you
Yes.
if you diversify your fiber sources a bit
Yes.
more. Yeah. So what are some of those sources?
Whole grains, your fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes, and then herbs and spices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Herbs and spices will be marginal in terms of like fiber intake, but
Yes.
it's a low-hanging fruit in terms of increasing your diversity.
Yes. Yep.
And you want to give them a target?
Yeah. 14 grams per 1,000 calories. From what I've read, going above that is great.
Yep, totally fine.
There's, as long as you don't experience GI distress.
Yep.
Work your way up. If you go 0 grams to 40 grams a day,
you're going to be
you're in for a tough couple days.
You're going to want to order a bidet and maybe a rosary.
Catholic humor. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But fiber is good for us, and we should be eating more of it. Yeah. That's my rant of the episode.
If you can shoot for 25 to 35 grams,
yes.
That's great. And if you can get more than that, all good. And just a heads up that when you do increase your fiber intake, you should probably increase your water intake too. This isn't something you necessarily need to track. Just try to be like semi-mindful about it.
Yeah. Carry a water bottle.
Yeah. Okay. So we covered the high volume foods, protein, fiber. We've covered calorie deficits, like aggressive calorie deficits, what, maybe it's better or worse. Now let's talk about, and one note on the calorie deficit that I do want to add is that the greater calorie deficit we are in, let's move aside from like the how easy it is to maintain, the stuff that I talked about earlier, but I just want to like go back and say really quick that the greater calorie deficit we are in, the slower we will gain muscle, or even we may lose muscle, even if we are lifting weights. Now, lifting weights will help tremendously more than anything else with this. But it's just important to note that, the greater calorie deficit you are in, the slower muscle growth occurs, and potentially even we lose it. Now, we will talk about some of those rates on the aggressive fat loss episode. I'll kind of really get into the weeds on numbers and all that, but I just want to say that there are trade-offs to going faster or slower. It's not all upsides from going faster, and it's not all upsides from going slower. Okay. Anyway, next common mistake in fat loss is over-reliance on exercise to create a calorie deficit. Where are my Orange Theory kings and queens at? Where are you guys?
Is Orange Theory the one with the like
splat number
points?
Yeah,
or something like
splat
that?
Points. Yeah, it was our old neighbor Carly that told us
she
about her splat points, and I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. She like did a workout or something, and she didn't earn enough splat points, so they were like, you need to do more or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
I've never been, but
no, me neither. But anyways, a lot of people, when they want to get in shape, especially for like New Year's or literally whatever, they think, okay, I'm going to start running. I'm going to start going to group classes. I'm going to start doing these fitness classes, things like that. And that's all well and dandy. But and while it will increase your energy expenditure, which is great, if you are not paying attention to the calorie intake side of that too, it is going to be an uphill battle. I'm not saying it's impossible. You absolutely could. People could absolutely lose weight just by exercising more. 100%. I don't want to say 100%, but like that is a feasible reality, is what I'm trying to say. However, there was a study by Herman Poncer in 2017, and he was talking about something called the constrained total daily energy model. And this constrained energy model basically, let's use an example of, let's say I know that I burn 2,000 calories a day. So my maintenance is 2,000 calories a day. And then I start running. And let's say I'm in a lab and I can accurately measure my energy expenditure. And let's say I'm I'm doing 100 calories worth of exercise. You would expect my total daily energy expenditure to go to 2,100, right? 2,000 plus 100 equals 2,100. Simple math. However, that it is an additive model. And maybe when we're at maintenance or in a surplus, our body may respond in that way where it is closer to that additive model. When we are in a deficit, it is more in line with this constrained energy model where, okay, we 2,000 calories, again, 100 calories of exercise, again. However, our body will down regulate our energy expenditure largely through something called NEAT, non exercise activity thermogenesis. If you've been a listener of the podcast for a while, you're very familiar with this. But I may reduce, for example, my pacing around, my tapping of my feet, my using my hands to speak, my, just different things like that. Maybe I'm slouching a little bit more instead of like keeping myself upright, which maybe marginally will increase my energy expenditure. It's things like that. And I don't want you to get too in the weeds of posture. I'm sure I've had a meltdown about posture in the past, but the short version is best posture is next posture. Don't get too, I need to be upright like this, and I need to have my shoulders back, and I need to be upright. It's fine. That's not the reason for your back pain. General inactivity is. Oh, Milo's awake. Well, you keep an eye on that. I'm going to keep talking.
Sounds good.
So where we might expect like that, the constrained energy model, we'll see that down regulation in energy expenditure. And so where we might expect that, 2,100 calories to be our new total daily energy expenditure, maybe it's 2,080, maybe it's 2,050, maybe it's even 2,020, maybe it's even 2,000, right? It's probably not 2,000 again. We probably didn't fully compensate for that. But that's just to say that trying to lose weight exclusively through adding exercise without making any dietary changes, it can be very difficult to maintain. So if you do want to lose body fat, lose weight, I would highly, highly, highly recommend making some tweaks to your diet, whether that is done through calorie and macro tracking, or whether that is done through just, some simple habits, like trying to eat more protein, like trying to eat more fiber, like trying to, whatever it is. Trying to eat more meals rather than like snacking, or eating bigger meals rather than snacking. That's, there's a lot of strategies when we think about weight loss and fat loss and muscle growth and all these different things. There are a set of principles that we need to adhere to. For example, weight loss. We need to make sure that we are in a calorie deficit. However, the ways that we can get there, the strategies that we can use to make that happen, that is where the creativity, the art can really happen. And that's where it's on an individualistic approach. Okay.
I do just want to hop in and say that Milo did fall back asleep.
Awesome.
Just so people don't think that I'm
what an awesome kid.
Ignoring him.
We love that baby.
Who knows how long this will last, though.
Sure.
But he is back asleep.
The next one is neglecting strength training. So while cardio is awesome for our health, this kind of, for our heart health, for our health in general, if we don't lift weights, we, what I talked about earlier, that collateral fattening, when we lose fat-free mass, we may experience increased hunger called hyperphagia. I kind of already covered this. Do you think there's anything else I should really say here?
No, I feel like we kind of made the point earlier on.
Yeah. And if you're curious about that study, it was a 2018 study by Dulu and colleagues. It'll be linked in the show notes. But yeah, again, this is not an all or nothing approach here. If you can't lift 7 days a week for 6 hours per session, good. You don't need to be doing that. If you can lift, 3 days per week for 30 minutes. Can't do that? 2 days per week for 20 minutes. Can't do that? 1 day per week for 15 minutes. You can do that. You have to be able to do that. And if let's say you can't do that, then every morning when you wake up, do 1 set of push-ups and then alternate that with some squats. And then, maybe that's what you do twice per week for a number of weeks until you do carve out the time. Maybe you're in the busiest week of your life or busiest month of your life. You can find a way to make something work. It's just about doing something. I don't think you need a math major to understand that 1 is infinitely greater than 0. That is, I know I've been throwing a lot of numbers out this episode, but that's an easy number to conceptualize. So yeah, just don't neglect your strength training, your lifting. Take your sets close to failure. Maybe listen to the Muscle Growth 101 episode. What episode was that? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find it.
All right.
Wait, which one are we looking for? The muscle?
Yeah, Muscle Growth 101. Do we have that one?
How to optimize muscle growth.
How to optimize muscle growth, episode 3.
3.
Yeah, okay.
Muscle Growth 101. No, we don't.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way.
We've never there's no way we
never
didn't
talk about muscle growth. That'd be insane. All right, cool. Episode 3, if you're curious about like optimizing muscle growth and all that. And again, when I do talk about optimization, please don't overthink it. I love all the research and stuff like that from the perspective of efficiency. And if we can make things more efficient, we can reduce the time it takes to either get you in the right direction, reduce the effort, or reduce the timeline that it takes you to get to your goal. And so I'm a big fan of efficiency, but I don't ever want to lose efficiency for the sake of compliance, adherence, enjoyment. Mm-hmm. All right, next, inconsistent tracking. Oh my God, I could write. I
think you skipped one.
Did I? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did.
Underestimating liquid calories and portion sizes.
Yeah, this is the next one. Yep.
Yes. These do often add up quickly without providing much satiety. Speaking of liquid calories, so your non-diet sodas, your alcohol, your coffee creamers, what other juice? What other liquid calories are there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
I guess there's some like cooking ingredients.
Sodas, juices, olive oils, avocado oils, any kind of cooking oils, things like that. But then the big one that all of you are probably guilty of is peanut butter. You cannot just take a spoon of peanut butter and say that was 1 tablespoon. You're lying. You're lying to me. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to your calorie tracker. You're a liar. That's all. So yeah, peanut butter is a big one. Mm-hmm. My tip on that would be to throw the jar on the food scale, turn it on, zero it out, take out however much peanut butter, and then look at the grams. Don't use volume use weight, not volume. Volume can be very inaccurate. Weight is very accurate. So just try to dial in the liquid calories, the cooking oils, and the portion sizes. Because if you're just eyeballing it, and this goes hand in hand with the next one, which is inconsistent tracking. I mean, this goes hand in hand. Yes. And it's eyeballing portions or skipping days of tracking, or even like skipping your general meal patterns for a day. If you think, I'm going to eat a lot on Friday, so I'm going to eat less on Thursday. I think there's a right way to do this, where you are smart, technical about it. You maybe reduce calories by 100, 200, and then allocate them to the next day. I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. I don't always think it's necessary, but I do think that's fine. What I wouldn't do is, Thursday's Thanksgiving, I'm skipping breakfast and lunch so I can go nuts at dinner. I think that can be a slippery slope. I think, I'm going out on Friday night for date night, so I'm going to skip Thursday night dinner. I think that's a bad idea. It can really lead to unintentional overeating because you're just trying to like keep up with that hunger that you've accumulated then. Yeah. And also just eating out, I guarantee every person listening to this, not guarantee, but I'm pretty sure everybody listening to this has probably underestimated one meal while eating out, like at least one meal while eating out, because those restaurants, they don't care about your calorie intake. They care about making delicious food. So that means they're probably going to throw a lot of cooking oils, a lot of butter, a lot of, whatever it is. It's going to have the good stuff in it. Yeah. And so one tip that I got from my buddy Mateo, Mara Strength on Instagram, I'd highly recommend checking him out. He has the 250 rule where he recommends rounding to the nearest 250. And I just think this is such a easy and straightforward method. When you go eat out at a restaurant, it's probably not 500 calories. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's 750 if you chose the salad with grilled chicken and very little dressing and you didn't get wine or anything like that. It's probably more 1,000, 1,250, 1,500 range. And if you got dessert, it might be more than that. If you got dessert, you split a bottle of wine, you got a burger and fries and you got an appetizer too, like you might be looking at 2,000, dude. You might
Yeah.
be.
And this isn't to like say like, oh, you can't eat out or like, oh, you should be afraid of eating out or anything like that. It's just like, just be aware and
Yep.
track as accurately as you can. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way of being 100% perfect with tracking when out to eat. But.
Yeah, and I think the really frustrating thing is when people think they are in a calorie deficit, but they're not losing weight. And the problem here is, like we said, maybe there's inconsistent tracking, maybe there's some eyeballing, maybe there's some underestimations of when they eat out. And so then it's, well, I'm only eating 1,200 calories, 1,300 calories, and I'm not losing weight. But in reality, there's some things that they mistracked. And
Right.
this is so common. So I don't want you to feel bad about this. This is so, so, so common. There was a study that I don't remember the exact numbers, but they had, they looked and it was something like people were under reporting calorie intake by something like 50%. I mean,
And
it's
even registered dietitians
even registered.
were,
Yeah. There was another study on registered dietitians and they were under reporting by a massive amount. So it's common, it's normal. And so just doing the best you can to try to increase that accuracy can really reduce frustrations in the long run.
It'd be very hard. It's very hard to make adjustments to your calories if you're working on inaccurate data.
Oh my God. What a line. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, totally agree with that. Go ahead and hit the back 15 seconds to go re-listen to what she said. I 100% agree. All right. Two things left. So first, well, not first, but yeah, I mean, first of the last two is focusing only on the scale. And I'm a big fan of scale data, but we need to be able to use it correctly. So that means weighing ourselves first thing in the morning, after using the bathroom, before eating or drinking anything, with minimal or similar clothing on. So that means I'm not going in there with sweats and a hoodie one day and then shorts and no shirt the next day, because that would drastically change things. And, when we look at the scale weight, it is looking at everything in our body. That means the water in our body, the bone, the muscle, the brain, the heart, the fat tissue, the food that we've eaten recently, all the not so pretty stuff that's happening in our intestines, and so it's looking at all of that. And so there will be these fluctuations. Maybe you ate, half a pound of strawberries. That's not going to be that many calories. That's not going to make you fat, but it will probably, you'll see maybe an increase on the scale. Right? Because the food had to weigh something. It went into your body. You eat a half pound of strawberries, you are now half pound heavier. That does not mean you gained a half pound of body fat, right? So when we're looking at scale data, we need to be able to look past these daily fluctuations. And these fluctuations, they could be half pound, 1 pound, 2 pounds. I've seen some people that have the craziest scale fluctuations because they don't have enough fiber. They don't have that regularity, of one time a day. Maybe their system is backed up for 3 days. I've seen them jump up 5 pounds and then all of a sudden 5-pound weight drop. And they're just celebrating and, thanking God that they are now, but it's like, okay, well, here's what happened. The scale tells you more about your bathroom habits than it does about your body fat. But when we zoom out and we look at weekly averages, week 1, week 2, week 3, that is when this data becomes a little bit more useful, because then it can tell us, okay, on average, are we in a calorie deficit, calorie maintenance, or a calorie surplus? Weight's going up, we're in a surplus. Weight staying about the same, maintenance. Weight's going down, deficit. But it takes 2 to 3 weeks of very consistent data to be able to really make a decision. So if you're looking at this day to day, you're 149 today, tomorrow you're 151, stop, relax, take a deep breath, look at the next 5 days. Great. Now you have a weekly average. Now compare that weekly average with the next 7 days, not just day 1 of week 2, all 7 days. Now you look at week 1 to week 2. And honestly, I like having 3 full weeks of data before I make any strong interpretations of the data. So yeah, focusing only on the scale for fat loss, while, you just have to interpret the scale the right way. It is probably the most, maybe not the most, it's one of the most impactful tools to ensure we are in a calorie deficit, maybe the most. But, you just need to be able to see it objectively. Anything to add on that one?
I don't think so. I think you covered it well.
All right. And the last one is ignoring sleep and stress management. So poor sleep and chronic stress can increase your hunger and hinder fat loss. So, this is This is more that it will make, when you're higher stress, like don't really worry about the influencers that are like, oh, cortisol is disrupting your body's capability to shed body fat. Like, no, that's bullshit. People in the Holocaust, very stressed. Were any of them obese?
No.
No, no. People in the what was it, the Kansas starvation, or was it Kansas? The Minnesota starvation experiment. All of them were very stressed. They were in a calorie deficit, but they were very stressed. Were any of them obese? No. Cortisol does not directly increase our body fat storages. It can make behaviors harder to adhere to. When we have higher cortisol, maybe we turn to increasing our food intake to kind of get that dopamine. Maybe we are more likely to skip our workouts. Maybe we're more likely to skip over our meals. And the same thing with low sleep or poor sleep quality is if we have poor sleep, low sleep duration, low sleep quality, maybe we are more likely to skip a workout. Maybe we're less likely to, have the energy just to move around as much. Maybe we're not making the same choices, the same dietary choices. So these things will make your fat loss results harder. But like I said earlier in the podcast, it still does come down to principles. When we're talking about weight loss, it will always come down to calories in versus calories out. There's a lot of things that, there's a lot of factors that play into both sides of that equation. Yeah, your hormones do play an impact on potentially your calorie intake and your calorie expenditure. Your age, your lifestyle, your genetics, all of these things and more will play a role on both sides of that equation. But at the end of the day, it will still always, always, always come down to calories in versus calories out. That is a fundamental law of physics. Okay. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Awesome. Well, so just to wrap it up, a quick, little summary. The most common mistakes in fat loss and things that, if you are looking to lose weight, here are some things that I would be trying to avoid. So first, pick a calorie deficit that works for your lifestyle and be realistic with yourself. Don't necessarily go too aggressive, but also don't be afraid of being a little bit more aggressive if it works for your lifestyle. Next, make sure you're getting enough protein, 0.6-ish grams per pound of either current or goal body weight is a really good target to hit. And if you want to go above that, it will help out with lean mass retention and even gain. Try to increase your fiber intake. 25 to 35 grams would be a really good target to hit. More is fine, but build up to it over time. Try not to rely only on exercise to create a deficit. Make sure you're paying attention to your nutrition. Do not neglect strength training. You want to be lifting weights to maintain or even gain muscle as you lose weight, largely, for health, for lifestyle, but also to avoid that hyperphagia, that increased hunger that can happen when you lose fat-free mass. Try not to underestimate liquid calories and portion sizes. Pull out the food scale. It takes only an extra 15 seconds or so to weigh stuff out, but weight measurements will always be more accurate than volume measurements. When you are eating out, try to track as accurately and consistently as possible. Track on the weekends, even if it's just a best estimate. That's a lot better than not tracking anything. And if you're totally unsure of what it is, find a few similar menu items from similar restaurants or round to the nearest 250. Try not to focus exclusively on the scale. But you can take circumference measurements around your waist, your neck, your hips, all those things. Progress photos are also great, trying to pay attention to how you're fitting in your clothes. But when you are looking at the scale, which is a very useful tool, make sure you're looking at weekly averages. I would look at probably 3 weeks at a time. And finally, try to maximize your sleep and your stress management. Okay, that's it. Once again, check out the A-Team. At the time of this recording, we have just started the 18th cycle of the A-Team. There's a 7-day free trial. Check out Forward Forever if you're interested in both training and nutrition. If you want a little bit of one-on-one coaching with me, check out the Change Project. It's a phenomenal program, and the first, we launched it, in October, November?
You think so?
Yeah, the
I think
first
November.
few people are finally wrapping up, and one person, Jordan, said it was in one word transformative. Which I'm gonna be writing a case report on him soon, so be stay tuned for that. I'll post on my Instagram. Speaking of which, if you don't follow me on Instagram, what do you do? I'm surprised. Like,
Yeah, how'd you find the
how'd you find
podcast?
the podcast? If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. We really, really would appreciate it. Thumbs up, whatever it is, and subscribe. And then, yeah, if you're interested in supplements, check out Legion, code ALEXTME. That's Alex T Me. For 20% off your first order and double points on purchase. And finally, check out Macro Factor. It is the best diet app by far. I've used it for the last 3 years and absolutely love it. Highly recommend it. Using code ALEX will get you a 2-week free trial. All right. That's it, everybody. Thanks for listening. Take care.